Good afternoon. My name is Rene Zambrano, and today we're interviewing Mr. Ernest Gonzalez for the Latina World Tour Oral History Project. We're sitting here at the VFW Don Diego here in Barrio Logan, December 18th, 2000. Before we begin this interview, sir, we would like to let you know that we're very appreciative of that you have decided to volunteer and spend some of your valuable time to share your experiences for the project. We also like to explain the purpose of the interview for the record by reading an interview release form, and I'll go ahead and read it. The purpose of the U.S. Latino and Latina World War II Oral History Project is twofold. One is to salvage the stories of U.S. Latinos and Latinas of the World War II generation, and two is to develop a structured audio, video, and photographic archive that will be accessible to scholars, journalists, and others interested in learning more about what life was like for U.S. Latinos and Latinas before, during, and after World War II. The archive will be housed at the Nettie Lee Vincent Latin American Collection and at the University of Texas Center for American History. So you signed this form already. You read it. Let's go ahead and begin this interview. We'll basically trace back from your parents. Tell us about your parents, where your parents from, and where did they come from, and your experiences growing up.
Okay. As far as I know, it's what I recall from the time that I was up to the time I was about 7 years old. And our parents originated from Mexico. My mother was from Guaymas, Sonora. And my father was from Aguascalientes, the Zacatecas, I think it is, wherever Aguascalientes is. But anyway, up until the year 1910, as I was told, things were going pretty good for everybody. But then the revolution popped up, and it seemed like anybody that was between 12 and whatever age is eligible to fight, and they were picking the kids off the street. By this time, my grandmother and her husband decided that they were going to get out of Mexico. And the results was they assassinated him. He was a guerrero. And one of the Mexican presidents was part of the family. The only thing of it is, these brothers, it was the Guerrero family was 3 brothers. One of them was in the army, the national part of it. And my grandfather was in business in Sonora. And the youngest brother was an engineer, and he left La Paz, and he started working in Tucson, Arizona. He was a boiler man, and that's where when they were putting in the Southern Pacific Railway, and he became the foreman there, and pretty soon most of the family started drifting in that direction. And Uncle Lalo, his last name was Edward, but Lalo is, he was called Lalo by everybody. He bore quite a family, and one of them he's still alive, a well-known artist. He's a singer, guitar player, Lalo Guerrero. So the Guerrero family migrated towards Tucson. In the meantime, my grandfather, who was Crispin Guerrero, he was the oldest of 3 brothers. He tried to get out of it, and they assassinated him. So my grandmother came north, and she got into business, but it wasn't in Tucson. It was in a small town north of Tucson by the name of Ray. R-A-E in Spanish, but it's spelled R-A-Y also.
This is north of Tucson.
Yeah. There was a big mining camp up there.
Your grandfather, what did he get assassinated from? Was it the government part, the government, or the?
He got assassinated by Pancho Villa and his, whatever you want to call him, his troops.
Did you ever find out why?
Well, I think he run out on him. He wouldn't go to training or anything like that or whatever. However they ran that army, I don't know, but he left. And they caught up with him and they assassinated him. There's very little been told to any of us, so I don't know why. It's something that happened way back, and I guess my grandmother and my mother was only 11 years old when this happened, when she lost her father and she had a younger sister. Consequently, they wound up in Arizona, and like I said, my grandmother went to Ray, Arizona, and she had a business up there. They had a boarding house, and this is where my mother and father met. My father came into the United States for the same reason, and that was to get himself and two younger brothers out of Mexico. They were pretty well established in Aguascalientes. They had a lot of property. They even had a gold mine on their property there, and they had a lot of cattle. And they had a big ranch, and it was family was pretty well to do down there, and they were pretty well liked. But evidently, my grandfather, on my father's side, he didn't believe in wars, and he was pretty well off, and he said, "I'm not getting involved." But it wasn't a matter of will you or won't you. They grabbed you and they took you, and that's all there was to it. So my dad came into Tucson, Arizona, and he wound up in this little, it wasn't directly because he was working in Douglas, Arizona, which is the border right between Arizona and Mexico there. He was in Bisbee. He worked the copper mines there. And then he worked his way up to Ray. And that's where my mother and father met. They were married in the year 1914, and that's when World War I started. My oldest brother was born in 1950, and he's going to be 85 here pretty soon. He was born on Christmas Day of 1915.
This is brother.
Brother Chris.
Chris.
Yeah.
He was also over to veteran, right?
He's a veteran too. All three of us were veterans. My brother Dave and myself. And my mother had a younger sister. She married about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years later, because she was 3 years younger. She didn't get married until she was 19. She didn't get married until about 1921, I think it was. She lived until this March. She was 97 years old when she died. And we buried her in March. But anyway, they were pretty well established. But my grandmother, of course, was without a husband. She had the two girls, and I guess they helped her. But they had some schooling in Guaymas, and the schooling that they had, it wasn't given to them by the government of Mexico. It was the Catholic Church, because they did have a school, and most of the Catholics down there were going to those schools that the church had put up. They had some schooling in the United States, but it was just enough to get by with. And I guess that in them days, well, when they were there, Arizona wasn't even a state then. They're just a territory. I guess it was called the Arizona Territory at that time. So there wasn't too much schooling in the West at that time. So whatever schooling they had in Arizona there, it came up in later years, and this probably was when they were in their teens. But how much schooling they had, I don't know. But I do know that in Mexico they'd been to the schools that the godly school had. Well, once my grandmother got established, she was pretty well off, and my dad and my father met my mother there, and of course they got married. I think my mother was 16 years old when she married, and my aunt didn't get married until she was 19 years old, which is, like I said, like about 5 or 6 years later. But they got established there pretty well. Both husbands were working, and then my grandmother decided that she wanted to come to California. Now, this coming to California wasn't just to see what was happening. Is my uncle, his last name was Valencia, he decided that San Diego, California would be a good place to live. And what happened was that at this time is when Tijuana became a known city. There was only about 10,000 people down there. But what made them is that they had a racetrack down there. They had a Tijuana racetrack only about a quarter of a mile from where the border is right now. I think it's a soccer field now or something like that, but that's where the old racetrack used to be. Right above it in Colonia Libertad was where all the stables were at and everything else. They used to bring the horses down on train, take them off the train in San Isidro, then walk them across the border. It was that close. But anyway, what happened was that Valencia, my uncle, he was a brother-in-law to one of the 5 people who supported the racetrack, or that were behind it, the financiers. And
what was the name of that racetrack?
Tijuana.
Tijuana racetrack.
Later on, Agua Caliente came along in 1928. So my aunt and her family was pretty well established. When they closed up Tijuana, they opened up Agua Caliente, and I was old enough to remember some of the things that were happening in the early 30s. Agua Caliente became, I guess, the weekend play area for the people from Hollywood. You know, it was always in the paper and the news. That's the only news you had. They didn't have anything else. But all the stars would come down there, you know, and they'll live it up during the weekend. The racetrack wasn't the only thing in Agua Caliente. They had a casino there. They had a spa. They had a beautiful hotel there. Then they had other casinos and whatnot in Tijuana. The Foreign Club was the biggest one there, but it was just the right type of area for the people who had money and wanted to live it up. Anything would go, you know. There was no laws and nothing like that, and everybody had a good time.
So would you say that Tijuana then developed economically because of racetrack and all that?
Agua Caliente and combined with Agua Caliente and Rosarito actually improved the economy for those who were living in San Isidro, Chula Vista, National City, and even people from San Diego. I mean, it wasn't too far to go if they had to work. So there for a period of time, maybe about I'd say about 12 years or something like that. The majority of the Latinos who were working at all were working south of the border. And they were not.
Your family was at this side of the border, San Diego, by that time? And you were how old when this demonic race strike started?
We left Arizona after my uncle and aunt did. What happened was this to my father. When they left Ray, they went up because there was a town by the name of Oatman, Arizona, which isn't far from California. It's about 30 miles east of Laughlin, where they have all the gambling now. You ever been there? Well, the name of the town is Oatman. And it's about 25 miles south of Kingman, Arizona, and about the same distance from Needles. But this was a mining town and nothing else. Sometime in the late 20s, there was 5 gold mines operating in Oatman, Arizona. Between 1924 and about 1929, Oatman, Arizona was the second largest city in Arizona, next to Tucson. Tucson had the business coming up because of Southern Pacific. They had a lot of work going there, and of course the mining kept Arizona alive. One of the 5 mines belonged to my father, and they were doing real good, and then everything started falling apart. And of course, what really killed them was a crash of 1929. At that time, I think an ounce of gold was selling for $32 an ounce or something like that, and it went down to about 15. My dad owned the place, and he was working 16 hours a day just to keep things going.
How did your father become a owner of that piece of land or the mining?
He put in a claim, and he struck it rich, and they start. Anybody can do that. Once you claim something and you put down your name on it, you can do whatever you want with it.
So, at the time, land was free, or how? Can you explain more of this, the claim process?
It didn't belong to anybody. It was part of the territory. It wasn't even a state. It was just part of the territory. So you could plant a tree and say, "I want to claim that tree." Put a stake up, and you had it. And that's all there was to it.
And
as far as it had to be in paper too, so that somebody can't say, "Hey, I want to know if this area belongs to anybody,"
was this territory U.S. territory, or is it Mexican territory still?
No. This is Arizona territory.
Not USA and that.
The Arizona didn't become a state until 1914. That New Mexico were the last 2 states to become part of the United States up until very recently, when Hawaii and somebody else came in. But anyway, when the crash came in, it hurt everybody. That town went from about 20,000 people, and inside of 1 year, they were down to below 5,000 people. And my dad, rather than try to keep it going and losing money, he blew it up. Blowing a mine up is a good way of keeping other people off of it. But he did. He blew it up, and he went back to work. He was a carpenter by trade. And he went to one of the other companies, and of course, he kept going. He had banked a little bit of money, but unfortunately, going bankrupt the way he did, it was too much for him. He died 3 years later. He was a young man. And he was in the hospital I can't tell you exactly how long, but I know he was in there probably close to a year. Because I remember I was in the first grade, and all of the second grade I spent up in Kingman, Arizona. That's where I went to school, in Kingman, Arizona. And he was in the hospital all that time. And it was late in 1931. It was the 4th of September. He died, 1931. So what we did then, we moved back to Oakland because we had a house down there. We didn't have to rent. We went back to the house there, and the third grade, I went back to Oakland. And he had some money. He didn't have a lot of money, but he had a few bucks. I paid his bills, I guess, or my mother paid the bills. And I think it was my grandmother who sort of enticed her into coming to California. So in 1932, in the summer of 32, we came into Los Angeles. We stayed there a while, and I remember the Olympics was going on in LA at that time. And then about a couple of months later, we moved down to San Isidro. Now, the only reason she moved down there really is because my aunt was there and my grandmother. So she had enough money to buy a house when we got there, and she had enough money to try a business, but she had absolutely no experience, and things didn't go too good for her. So we had some real tough days. I would say between 1932 and 1935, because
Back in Arizona, when your family did was pretty well off economically, would they had their mining business?
well, when my dad was alive, they were always good, because he was a carpenter by trade, and no matter where he went, and there was a mining plant, he'd always be the foreman or something like that. He brought with him was two of his younger brothers. They were always with him. Um, I think one of them went back and got his girlfriend, brought her back and married her, and then the youngest brother, I think he just latched on to some gal in L.A. or someplace. But I didn't ask too many questions about that.
Did you when your father had the mining business, were you in school or were you helping?
No, we were in school.
You were in school.
No, we had.
What elementary school did you attend? What was the name of the school, grammar school that you attend?
Oatman Grammar School. Oatman is sort of like a deserted town now.
Really?
But there is some action around there. They got a bunch of donkeys walking up and down the street. But I don't know. There's probably maybe 300 or 400 people there. And there's a few restaurants there. There's a bar, and there's a lot of little souvenir stores there.
When your family lived back in Bisbee, did they also work in the mining?
Yep.
And your dad worked in the mining industry? What were his experiences working there?
Well, their experience had started on their own property in Mexico. They owned a mine. They had a mine right on their own property. Consequently, my dad was brought up as a carpenter. And one of the things that makes a carpenter so important in mines is as they're digging, they have to keep the rest from caving in on you. So he knew how to do all that, and he was the boss, and they'd go down, and he was in charge of the whole thing.
The mining industry back in Bisbee, was it mainly worked by Mexican workers?
I would say 75% of it was the low labor was Mexican. The engineers and things like that were all something else. They were not Mexicans. There was very few of them that had the education for it. My dad was one of the few guys that said, "Hey, I'm a carpenter." At least he had a trade. But most of the guys were getting out of there to escape Pancho Villa.
How does your family develop some maybe negative feelings or resentment towards Pancho Villa and his troops because of what happened in.
No, let me tell you what happened. As far as I'm concerned, we grew up knowing that there was such a person as Pancho Villa. Mm-hmm. My grandmother, being from Sonora, was brought up and very close to several of people who became generals and big shots in Mexico. One of them lived here in the San Isidro, and he was one of the big men in not only in Tijuana, but because he became temporary president of Mexico. His last name was Rodriguez. And my grandmother was brought up with him. You know, they weren't part of the family, but they were neighbors and things like that. And from the Guerrero family, the other two brothers, my grandfather got assassinated, okay, by Pancho Villa. Marco Antonio, who was he was the second brother. My grandfather was the oldest, then Marco Antonio. And Lalo Guerrero was the boiler maker. Lalo Guerrero was his son. He's a musician. The second brother became a big politician in Mexico, Marco Antonio. And behind him was Marco Antonio Jr. Up to about 20 years ago, Marco Antonio was he was in the army. He was the biggest general in Mexico, and they had a lot of them here, but he was the top guy. And then he became Secretary of Defense. Secretary of Defense in Mexico moves into the presidency if he's assassinated because they don't have a vice president. Mm-hmm. So he was the number two man. And this is up to about 20 years ago. You know, he's still in power. He's pretty old now.
What political party did your grandparents belong to? They were before the revolution, before they left.
In Mexico? Mm-hmm. They didn't have any parties, really, you know. They were those that were in, and then the others were the rebels, you know, just like what we had here in the United States prior to the Civil War. And the reformers or whoever they were, you know, they tried to keep things going. Of course, if you wasn't with them, you were against them, and there was a constant battle down there all the time.
What is looking back at family experiences? What is your perspective on the revolution in Mexico revolution?
I don't think we ever got involved in it. You know, I'm sure my oldest brother didn't even think about it. You know, once they left, well, we were all born in Arizona. We were all born in the United States. But even our mothers and, you know, they'd say, well, that's behind us. They didn't want any more of it. We all went through school. My oldest brother became one of the top engineers at Convair after World War II started. He came back. He was a sergeant and I think a radioman on W-24, whatever they had out in the Pacific. So we all had pretty good education, and English became our first language. I speak Spanish. I'm speaking Spanish better today than I ever spoke in my life, and that's not too good. But I was actually probably spoke the language better than 90% of the white guys. You know, the white guys, or whatever we want to call them. You know.
What are your school experiences like in grammar school?
I was very, very fortunate. See, this is the nice thing about being the youngest of the flock, because when I was in the first grade, I went in when I was 5 years old. Do you know that I had memorized every book up to the fourth grade? I'd memorized it. I didn't know how to read, but I could tell you exactly what it said. So what was happening, and I had 3 people older than me, as they went to their book stayed home, and I'd hear them read it, and the first thing you know, I knew all of them. And it got to the point where the only time that I spoke Spanish at home is when I spoke to my mother. And it became that way throughout the family. It wasn't just to me, because I was the fourth born, but I had 3 sisters younger than me after that. After I was born. So there was 6 of us all together, and the last 3 were girls, and they were the same as I.
What was the school like? Going to grammar school, the social environment.
Are you talking about California or Arizona?
Arizona grammar school.
Arizona, we was a very, very small minority. In the entire town of Oatman, even when it was a population of 25,000 people or whatever it was, there was probably not over 10 Mexican families there in the town, and 2 of them were ours. I remember a guy by the name of Soto. Era compadre de mi papá y mi mamá. He had a ranch in the Colorado River. I think they still own the property, but they've all died off. Nosotros, Villarreales. And there's about 3 or 4 other Mexican families there. And they were all there for the same reason. You know, they wanted to get the hell out of Mexico.
Was the school segregated?
Nope. There never was. I didn't even know what a Mexican was.
So
You know, I didn't know what a Mexican was.
did you consider yourself American at the time?
Yeah, I did. Nobody ever questioned me. You know, when I was in Arizona, I don't remember anybody asking me what I was, a Spanish or Mexican. I didn't know. Nobody asked me. But when I got to California, it's a different story. And we were in trouble because I could speak very little Spanish. The only Spanish that I spoke was when I spoke to my mother. Because amongst ourselves, we all spoke English. And as we grew, we picked up a little here and a little there, you know, and it doesn't all rub off. You can, you know, there's certain things that you just have to learn, and you do the best you can with it.
In Oatman, Arizona, did you experience racism or discrimination
No.
in schools?
No. The only time that I thought it may have got a little bit ugly is when the Southerners started getting into the mining towns, looking for work. These were the very, very poor who had no trades, they'd been farmers all their life. And they were looking for any kind of work. Most of them were nothing but pick and shovel people.
This was during the Great Depression?
Yeah. It was tough. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. It's happened throughout the world, and that's not the only crash. It just happened in the United States at one time, and it made everybody suffer, I'll tell you.
So your family was doing well off, then the Great Depression came, set in, and they lost everything? And will you attribute that to the Great Depression?
Well, we weren't alone. I mean, 75% of the people were out of work. And what little work was going on was sort of temporary, You could work the whole year around if you like to pick oranges, or you like to pick celery, or you want to pick. It was there for you. I didn't pick fruit, but I did work every summer on Otay Mesa. From the time I was 14 till I joined the Navy. But I couldn't get a job anywhere else. You had to be 18 to go into the plants here. But I did work prior to going into service from the 1st of January until I enlisted.
After your family left Arizona, moved to Los Angeles, they came to San Diego. Los Angeles. How long did you spend in LA, or your family?
So it was just a couple of months.
So you ended up finishing school here in San Diego?
Yep.
In North San Diego. Where did you attend?
Sweetwater High School.
Sweetwater High School. That was high school? Or...
Sweetwater High School was the only high school south of San Diego in them days. Mm-hmm. We were also the largest high school, and we used to beat up on everybody.
We saw on everybody?
San Diego itself, the city of San Diego only had 2 high schools, Hoover High School and San Diego High. And when I was in my junior, senior, we beat both of them.
So high school and high school where you stayed at Sweetwater High, or did you go somewhere for junior high?
Junior high school, I went to Southwest Junior High School down in Esther.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about your experiences going to school there.
I was one of those fortunate kids that I could get along with anybody. It didn't make any difference who it was, how big they was. I think I was born without any fright. I fought everybody. I never got whipped. I wasn't afraid of anything. I hit a guy that was 14 years old when I was 9 years old and broke his nose. And the guy shouldn't even be talking to me, but he wanted to slap me around. I just threw one and caught him right in the nose, And he never did mess with me again. But I used to challenge everything. I didn't care what the game was, football, baseball, basketball, you just name it. I played it. And the thing is I played it better than most of the bigger guys. I started the 10th grade at Sweetwater High School at the age of 14.
What year was that?
In 1938. I weighed 110 pounds, and I made the football team. I lettered. I was a shortstop on the varsity baseball team 3 years in a row. I was forward on the basketball team 3 years in a row. And I was tailback on the varsity football team. I made 9 letters. When I got out, I was 17 years old. And another thing that I like school. I didn't miss one day of school from the 4th grade through the 11th.
Were there any differences between your school experiences in Arizona and here in San Isidro or San Diego?
I think we probably had a little more selection here. We had a library for one thing, and we could use it. I used it quite often. Hollywood didn't have anything except the books that were issued to you by the school.
Earlier, you said that you mentioned that you say you were fortunate. What do you mean by that? You were fortunate growing up.
Well, I was. It didn't make any difference if the guy was Okie or Texan or what he was, you know. Well, we didn't go by white guys. You know, we were Mexicans, they were something else. But we didn't worry about it. And this is a beautiful thing about being equal. There was just as many Mexicans in San Diego as there was whites. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it wasn't a matter of, you know, 2 or 3 guys jumping on you or something like that. Nobody ever jumped me. Everybody challenged me. But the reason they were challenging me is because I was small. And I was too young to know better. So if they pushed me, I pushed back. And if they swung, I'd swing back. And once in a while, I'd hit them in the nose. You know, and that's the way it was all my life. And I had 2 brothers, and they were older than me, and they started pushing around too, and they got one in the nose, you know, and I didn't win too many fights against them, but I wouldn't get whipped either. And when you compete with guys bigger and better than you are, you become better. There's nothing to stop you. It makes you try harder. And this is something that I've always tried to talk young guys into, that don't quit, you know, give it everything that you have. You may not be able to hit it the way you want right now, but you keep swinging and you're going to hit it pretty soon. And there's a lot of guys that they don't get into anything with the purpose of achieving something. They just say, well, I'm going to do this or do that, then if I can't do it, I'll quit. Well, that's not the right attitude.
Did you get those special qualities from somebody in your family, or did somebody teach you to be persistent or very assertive in your life?
My brother Dave was a good athlete.
Your brother who?
Dave.
Oh, I guess that. Well,
See, he was just filled in. That's it. When he left, I just filled in for him. No, I have a hard time talking about my brother Dave. He died 10 years ago.
This was your oldest brother?
No, he's a second brother. But he taught me all our games, all the athletic games. The only thing I could always beat him at was pool. I was a pool shark. I worked in the pool hall when I was 14 and 15. By the time I joined the Navy, I always had a job doing something. But I think when I was 16, I could have probably been in world's competition. Didn't make any difference what kind of pool you wanted to play. I was going to win.
Did you look up to your older brothers after your dad was died? Did your brothers become your role models?
No, I was very independent. They were bigger than me. They never had to help me. I was a good student. I was an A student from the 4th to the 11th grade. And I was a good athlete. I always had time for the books. And I don't know, it seemed to me like I used to get on to some author and I'd read everything he wrote. I used to like to read. I think where most of the Mexican kids had the problems with reading and spelling. But I found out to myself that the reason they had problems is that they didn't have the same accent that I had acquired. You know, they still had the Mexican accent, you know, and I'd heard the words and I could pronounce them properly. Spelling was, I don't know, everything was easy to me. But I used to work at it, you know.
What was your mother doing during this time that your family moved to San Diego?
Well, she tried to get into business, but she didn't know how to run a business. She didn't have the experience, you know. She'd been a housewife all her life, and so she got out of that. My grandmother was the, you know, she had the experience. She'd run a restaurant and a boarding house and all of this. The Rodriguez I spoke to you about, and I don't know if you've ever heard about a Mexican president by the name of Calles.
I heard it.
Okay, he was president of Mexico between 1928 and 32, I think it was. And Rodriguez was a guy that took over for him until they got another president. So he was there for about 4 years. But anyway, my mother had met Calles during the revolution, and they were from Sonora. So was Rodriguez. And they knew the families, you know. So when things started going bad, my mother worked under Rodriguez. He had a beautiful mansion just 100 yards from the border down there in San Isidro. And then later on, when he became president, Calles was living up here in San Diego on Dixon M. Street. It's right up there behind the blood bank. What street is that? R.S. Upas. He lived on Upas, a big mansion up there. And at that time, Calles was regarded as one of the top 10 guys in the world for richness, you know. He left Mexico with all their treasure. But he was pretty well to do. So she worked and she started to help both daughters. You know, so my brother Chris got out of high school. He was 8 years older than I was. So when I was in 6th grade, I guess it was, he was out of high school and he started working. He worked service stations. I think a person would do anything just to be working. There wasn't that much available, but if you wanted to work, you could find a way. And they helped my mother. My older sister helped. My brother Dave, when he got out of high school, he went to Arizona, and he went to work for my uncle Lalo over there. And they all pitched in. One of the things that helped us more than anything else is when we came here from Arizona, my mother did have the money to buy a house with. We never had any problems with the home, you know, but we ate well.
Was the depression still strong? But the Great Depression was pretty bad still.
Well, it lasted for about 10. World War II stopped it, you know. But the bad years were for the people from the Midwest, the people from Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Those people had nothing over. Are you familiar with Sweetwater?
Sweetwater High School.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know where that little 9-hole course is at?
The what
On
course?
Sweetwater Road. The Nicest City golf course.
Yes. Yes.
Right in front of that little market area there. Anyway, that used to be called...
Right next to the 805 freeway, correct?
Yeah. That gulch is called Okie Gulch. And they had another name for it, Cardboard Gulch. That's all that lived in there. It was a bunch of Okies. That's what they were living under. Cardboard boxes. And that wasn't the only place. You went down to Imperial Beach. You're familiar with the Navy Naval Air Station down there?
By the beach.
Well, you know where the entrance to Reamfield is down there?
Field.
Reamfield.
Oh, Greenfield.
Ream.
Rim?
R-E-A-M.
No.
Well, Reamfield was a Naval Air Station down there in Imperial Beach. I think it's down on the foot of about 11th Street or something like that. Well, all that was brush down there. And that's where the Okies build up.
How were the Okies looked upon by, say, from Mexican people that were living here and in Anglos and just people in general?
You had no reason to be afraid of them, but you felt sorry for them. You know, when you see people dragging kids around and looking for a place just to stay warm or something like that, and going through trash cans and things like that for food, it's pretty sad. And you know, even the poorest of the Mexicans, at least they had a house. They had the roof over their heads, you know. But they were very difficult days. I remember families that used to leave as soon as school let out. Everybody from this area would go up into Santa Clara and places like that, because that's when the fruit start ripening, you know. They had to go up there and pick peaches and apricots and everything.
It was the harvest season.
You know what fruit is right now? During those years, between 1932, let's say, to 1940, how much do you think you could buy with 10 cents of apricots?
Then? Idea.
How about a watermelon, with 10-pound watermelon? How much they would cost you? No matter what it was a penny a pound. For 10 cents, you could buy 10 pounds worth of apricots. You could buy a 10-pound watermelon. You could buy eggs for 12 cents a dozen. That's another thing that we did. And I used to do most of the work there, because we had a chicken coop and we had our own chickens. And we had about a dozen chickens, I guess, and a couple of roosters. So we used to be provided with eggs, and we had our own chicks, you know. And I was the only guy that knew how to strangle a chicken. My two brothers wouldn't do it. My mother would tell me, go out there and wring a chicken. You ever do it? Huh? Yeah. I did it because I saw somebody else do it. I said, well, I guess that's the way to do it. But you grab them by the neck and wring it right off. And another thing I used to like to do was hunt. And we weren't that far out from the mountains there. I don't know if you're all the area's taken out, so but you know where 805 goes up on the right on the east side of San Isidro?
905.
Now 5 comes down through the middle of the town practically. This is over on the east side. There's a railroad trestle. And behind that railroad trestle, there's a school right at the foot of the mountain there. Well, that was almost out in the country in them days, you know. Because I used to just cross the railroad tracks. There was no school there, and there wasn't anything, just a mountain up there. I used to go out there and, hey, you're at a 410. I'd take 2 shells up there, and I knew I'd had 2 rabbits when I got back. That'd be a shooter.
Was there segregation in San Diego between during the time we came or moved down?
About the only segregation in the whole county that I was aware of was in San Diego itself. Logan Heights was south of Imperial. From Imperial up to Broadway between about 24th, going that way down to about 40th is all black. Imperial Avenue, Memorial, Junior High School. All black, all black, all black. The only blacks they went to was
So you mean that the neighborhoods were segregated, or was it the schools that were segregated? Both?
the schools. There was Mexicans going to the schools, but there was a few whites. But as far as where they lived, it was all on Imperial Avenue, going that way from probably about 14th.
14th Street?
Yeah, from 14th going that way. All the way out to 40th. It's all black.
14th Street going east. 40. How about Chula Vista and National City? The any schools were segregated?
Chula Vista was segregated, but there was Mexican people there. National City had more Mexicans than Chula Vista. But there were no blacks. I didn't know a black personally until I got out of high school. I knew the black guys from San Diego High School because we competed against them. But I mean, we didn't have them as neighbors or something like that.
How do you see other Latinos, and were they the same as you? And did you primarily hang around with a lot of were most of your friends Latinos?
There was no other Latinos. There was either Mexicans and Españoles. There were several Spanish families in San Isidro, and some of them were from the original families. I still have a real good friend who went to school together by the name of Alonso. They have property down in should be east of Tijuana. They've had it all their lives. They I don't know how they went about it, but they got it from the Spanish government. It's been there ever since. There was a lot of properties here in San Diego County that belonged to Spanish. But what happened was when the railways started moving through, they just ignore it and say, we don't care who owns it, we're going to go through there. That almost anything north of, anything north of the San Diego River was all property that had been turned over by the Spanish or the Mexican government.
Did railroad companies buy the land off the families, or they just?
Now they passed some kind of a law, that they had to have it because it was necessary for transportation for passengers and everything else. They got a lot of help from the government, but they just sold it.
So they get money for the land.
Who, the owners?
The owners.
Hell no, they just what do they do now? There's a word for it. When they claim something, when the government takes something over from you, what do they call it? There's a word. I can't remember. And I was a real estate broker at one time, and I can't remember that. But they actually they can. There's a word for it, and I can't remember it right now. But they say we're gonna take it over.
There was during the Great Depression there was a Repatriation Act, under Hoover, President Hoover, and here in San Diego, for example, there were 10,000 families that were repatriated back to Mexico. Did you or your friends experience any?
Yeah, I think everybody did. Where it was really bad was in L.A. I think L.A. was probably worse than anywhere. Maybe in the other states, but I was only aware of it in Los Angeles. Because I had we had some family people up there, and they got away with it somewhere or another. I think it was because all the kids had been born here or something like that. There was certain things that could be, but if you were from Mexico originally and your children, they probably kick it back to Mexico. But if the kids were born in the United States and were American citizens, it sort of drop it.
Back to continuing from your high school years, were your teachers? Did your teachers encourage you to go to college?
Well, I'll tell you how bad it was. Now, I'm not saying this happened to every Mexican person, but it happened to me. Okay, and what really hurt was the fact that I was pretty well known in school, and I'd been an honor roll student, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And there was a guy down in Sweetwater who was the dean of boys, okay? And he was supposed to show you the way. I hated that guy.
What was his name?
I'm trying to think of his name, but anyway. He talked to me one day for about 5 minutes. I hated that man so much after that,
At Sweetwater High School?
Yeah. We had a nickname for him too, but I can't think of his name right now.
Why did you hate this guy?
Well, he's the dean of boys, okay? So what he was supposed to do is, call you in there on his spare time, and he would supposed to talk to you about your future,
He called it you.
Yeah. So what happened, I was a junior A, I guess, second semester, and he called me in. And he says, he says, you're through with algebra? He says, you're through with algebra A? And I was taking geometry. He says, you're taking fourth year English? He kept on and on and on. And finally I said, so what about it? He said, you're wasting your time. I said, what do you mean I'm wasting my time? I'm getting an education. He said, a person like you is not going to go to college. And I knew what he meant. I said, okay.
How do you interpret that?
Huh?
How did you?
Well, it took money. It took money to get in colleges in them days. There wasn't any money from the government or anything like that, or because of what you did in high school. There was no such thing as scholarships, and there were fewer for Mexicans or non-Americans. And it hurt me so much. I could have blasted that guy right in the mouth. I really, jeez, I was tempted to. And I told him, I says, I don't care what you think. I'm going to run my life to suit me. And I'm glad that I did. Well, what I was trying to do is I had the wrong curriculum because, I was keying up for further education. And in them days, it wasn't that way. It was impossible. Once in a while, I'd select a guy out for sports ability, but they weren't putting out too many of them, especially the Mexicans or anybody else. You had to be a superstar to get in there just on athletic ability.
Did your counselors ever tell you about the college or courses that were geared towards college? Did you ever find out about that?
No, I just never did talk to the guy again. And he was the dean of boys, okay? And of course, all of the, that doesn't like for this, I can't remember either, but anyway, all of the scholars, the guys that were honor roll guys, we used to have meetings. Well, hell, for 2 years I'd made every meeting there was, and he knew what kind of grades I had, but he didn't encourage me. What he tried to do was slap me down, and I hated that guy, but
looking back at that experience growing up, you think that might have been because you were Mexican, or?
Well, it could have been partly, but it was primarily because what are you going to do once you leave here? You're not going to go to school any further. This is the end of it. But so what? Let me suffer with it. You don't have to tell me about it, It was hard to get scholarships back then days. I mean, there was just none to be had. Occasionally, and you had to be a superstar to get an athletic scholarship.
Was Spanish allowed, or were Spanish allowed, or people, or Latinos or Mexican students allowed to speak Spanish in school?
I spoke it. We all spoke it. They tell you not to, but once you get out of grammar school, they lay off of it.
So in grammar school, that you did, you were told by teacher not to speak Spanish?
No, it wasn't even grammar school. You
used to speak it?
We do it, sure. We always did. But let me tell you what happened. And I don't mean to do this because this is really happening. Okay, it's a little bit nasty, but not that bad. I was a sophomore, and I'd taken English 1, English, Anyway, I wound up taking 5 subjects, and I was supposed to only carry 4. I had biology, and then the second period I had Spanish. But we had a young teacher by the name of Clark, Marion Clark. She's just a young woman, maybe 25, 26, right out of college. And the Spanish she was taught was Castilian. The biggest difference between Castilian Spanish and our Spanish is the Castilians don't roll their R's. And she got up, and she used to like to write things on the board, and then when she wrote on the board, she'd read it off. Well, there was one little word spelled in English, B-U-T, that she couldn't pronounce in Spanish. And there was probably about 10 Mexicans in there, okay? So she got up there one day, she started reading, and when she came to but, pero, she said pedo. Well, but when it came out of her mouth, 10 people just ha, 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 ha. And she turned us in. So anyway, I went in to see the principal for something else. It wasn't for that, but I think I got run out of study or something like that. And he said to me, he says, well, why don't you just come down to my office here? He said, you can do your homework right there. You're a real nice guy. This guy liked me, though. So then he said, he says, you take a Spanish, what is it? He says, Marianne Clark, you're a teacher? I said, yeah, she's my teacher. He says, how do you like her? Oh, she's a real nice young lady, I said, really nice. And he looked at me and said, well, it says, she's complaining about you, Feeper. I said, yeah, what happened? She said, well, she's come to me and said that, you were giving her a hard time. And I said, no, we're not giving her a hard time. And he said, well, what's happening? And so I told him exactly what she said. And he laughed like heck too, His name was Darcy Anderson. He is our principal, a real nice guy. He went into the service. I met him. Of course, he went in with a commission, and I didn't, but we ran across one another. But when I told him, what happened, he laughed like he's very. Says, well, he says.
What are some of the memories of your childhood memories?
I couldn't give any importance because I had a good time. I loved it. I mean, everything I did, I liked, everything I did, I think I was quite fortunate. I think I don't think I really had to work for anything. I just had the ability, I had a good mind. I had good eyes. Well, this is another thing. I didn't know until that occasion when they asked me to become a fighter pilot why I was any different than anybody else, And I was told that I had 2015 fight. That's about as strong as an eagle's eye. 2015 means this: from a distance of 20, not feet, it's something else. It's measured off in the meters. Anyway, 20 means like 20 feet, okay? And the lettering would come down to 15. 2020 means that you're 20 paces away or whatever, and the size of the print is 20. So that's what they call average. 2015 is super. So when I found out about this, that they wanted to make a fighter pilot out of me, He said, well, that's one of the reasons. And he says, the other reason, he says, your blood pressure. He says, you wake up and your blood pressure is 90, and you run a mile and it's still 90. I said, so what? I said, I don't feel bad about it. He said, yeah. He says, but you know what happens to a fighter pilot when you're up at 20,000 feet? Your blood pressure goes up to normal. Right now, I'll be 77 the 1st of January, and my blood pressure right now sits at about 68 over about 120, 115. But I was 46 years old before my blood pressure ever got over 100. So, you know, when you wonder why a person can do this and do that and never get tired, there's a reason for it. It's something that you were just endowed with the day you were born. And I was that fortunate. And then when I had my chance, I turned it down. I didn't want to be an eagle out there shooting birds.
What do you do for fun as a young man?
I think I was always tied up in something. When I was a little guy, I was the best marble player out there. I used to wear out my pants, but I used to win all the marbles. And any game, I don't care what it was. If the girls wanted to play hopscotch, I beat them at that. You know, it didn't make any difference. I used to play volleyball. I played basketball. And like I said, I was 14 years old and I took a pool and nobody could beat me. See, I didn't know I had that great eyesight until I was, after they told me. Every doctor in the world wanted to look at him, but I could still read that without glasses. There's a lot of things that you wonder about, you know. Do you know that I was sick when I was 4 years old, I think it was? I had the measles. I never had, once in a while, and it's not every year either. Like just recently. I didn't have the flu, but I had some type of congestion that it bothered the heck out of me. I'm not kidding, for about 2 weeks. But very seldom do I have cold. I walked around with a broken neck for 24 years before anybody discovered it. Strange things. I broke my neck making a tackle up to University of Utah. And right after that happened, you know, it knocked me out a little bit, and I got up, kept playing. The following game, I kicked off, and I made the tackle, and I dove into this guy's knees, and I got knocked out again. But I played the whole season. 24 years later, I was playing golf, and one day I couldn't pick up my arm. I said, geez, that's what happened, you know. And I told the guys, I can't play, so I got to quit. So I went to the Naval Hospital. And this was 1974, 49. You know, like 24 years after it happened. And the doctors said, well, we're going to give you a check. What's this? They call it the EKG or something like that. Check your heart. They came out, yeah, you had a heart attack. That's not bull. I didn't have a heart attack, for Christ's sake. My neck wasn't hurt just because I have a heart attack, you know. I said, it's back here, and I can hardly move my right arm, you know. And I said, you take it easy for a couple of days, you know, and they give me some pills. I didn't take the pills. But about 3 days later, I got out one of these cloth tapes. You know, the ladies use them to measure things. And I lay it across there, you know, and I checked the diameter of it. I knew what it was, but I just wanted to see what the tape would say. I checked this one, and my right tricep was smaller than my left, and I'm right-handed. And I was always about a half inch bigger here, you know, about 17 and a half or something like that. So I went up there and I saw this doctor. I said, you know what? I said, there's something wrong. I said, because I'm losing my right arm. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, measure it. And I told him, I'm right-handed, I'm an athlete, and I said, I know, you know, what should be what. And he got real excited. What they did back in them days, they didn't have this MRE or whatever it is. They didn't have that. They had X-ray, but the X-ray wouldn't do it. Anyway, they did something. They poured some kind of liquid down your spine, and then they'd X-ray and whatnot, and it would show up. I had 2 broken vertebrae. I'd run around with them for 24 years, and nobody knew about it. They operated. I got a big scar back there now. But I never did feel any pain up that, and it wasn't even a pain. It was more like numbness, you know. Mm-hmm. Strange things. But I don't think there wasn't ever anything that really bothered me. You know, I mean, I'd get mad that it would be, you know, somebody pushed me, I'd push them back, okay? That was the end of that. They pushed harder, I pushed harder, and that was the end of that. But, you know, I'd forget about it. I didn't go around any grudges or anything like that.
So when you were growing up, you were known as a fighter?
No.
No?
They just said stay away from him because he kicked their butt. They all got wise real quick.
Is there any fond memories or events that stand out?
You know, the things that you achieve, once they occur, the thrill that you may have gained, you know, it passes quick too, you know. I mean, I had a million of those occasions, you know. I used to throw a touchdown. I did a home run. Whatever has happened, you know, it's a great thrill. But it's over. You know, it doesn't last until tomorrow or doesn't like that. And I had a lot of, I shouldn't say that. But no, I did. I've been fortunate. I was quite a playboy, but I've only been married once. You know, and I've got a beautiful wife, and been a little ill lately, but I have a beautiful family. Let me show you. This was taken just recently for my 75th birthday there. Mm-hmm. Here's a picture of me when I was a 21-year-old kid.
Just what you do? That's you?
But I was taken at a birthday party at the house 2 years ago. And I got a huera, pero es mexicana. She's a Puerto Rican, Spanish Puerto Rican.
So you graduate from high school. What happens next? What year did you graduate?
1941.
What did you do right after high school?
Well, I went to work. I worked all summer. I played baseball all summer. About pretty much what I always did, you know. And of course,
You work at where?
Roar Aircraft. I got hired right away as soon as I became 18. The only reason I couldn't get work in the industry is because I wasn't 18 years old. I'd worked at Roar Aircraft. They had 600 people there when I got hired. They went into 3 shifts. And I think they went from 600 employees to about 4,000. When I became junior lead man, I worked on the spot welder, and my lead man took me along, and I was an assistant lead man. I'd go from work to Tijuana every night.
After high school, 1938.
Tijuana was the greatest place in the world at one time. Now it's so bad that you can't even. I mean, it was fun.
So you worked at Roar for how many years?
I worked there for 3 months.
3 months, and then you volunteered.
What have you? I enlisted, see, but it was so backed up that they'd say, "We're gonna swear you in now. You'll be getting paid for the next 3 months, but we're not gonna call you in until June or July or whatever, you know."
So what year was this?
This is 1942. This is 4 months after the attack.
Pearl Harbor. Where were you at when Pearl Harbor got attacked?
On that day,
That day.
I was at the Rodriguez Dam. You know where that's at in Tijuana? South of Tijuana? Well, they have this dam that Mexico put up in 1936, and it stops the Tijuana River. It flows into the ocean down here in Pearl Beach.
What were you doing there?
Hunting. Good hunting up there. And it was on a Sunday, and me and a guy by the name of Escalante, we used to hunt together, and went down out there, and we got back about 10 o'clock in the morning, and all the radios were on. Pearl Harbor was being bombed.
What was your reaction?
The guy there was about 4 or 5 of us. Together, we were all about the same age. So, this friend of mine, Billy Denton, asked me, he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to join the Navy as soon as I can." And I said, "I'm not going to do it to be heroic or nothing like that. I just want to have a hell of a lot of fun. You know, I said, I want to be with guys my age, and there's going to be more of us than anything else." No, it's right. We were all 18 years old.
What was your parents' reaction?
Well, my mother had 3 sons, you know, and she didn't want any of us to go, but she knew that. And my 2 older brothers were married. So I thought, well, maybe they can get out of it. I said, but I won't.
Yeah. Did your brothers have special considerations since they were married, or that matter at all?
No, they got called up and they went. To them, it was a greater sacrifice than mine. Mine was just saying, "Hey, I want to go out there and have some fun," you know. I've always felt this way about about life. I guess I felt it when I was young too. I worked hard, I played hard, I enjoyed life. And I think one of the greatest thrills I always had good friends. I got along great. We did. We just had good times. And I said, well, I'm not going to be out there alone. There's going to be a lot of other 18-year-old guys out there either. Did you see that book about you remember I told you about the brother rats? Yeah. There are the brother rats. And
Now,
that's me. This is my brother Chris right next to me. I'm the guy that put the group together after we said, let's get the hell out of here. I don't want to look at these old men.
were the brother rats were all of them World War II veterans?
All of us were veterans. We're the guys that told VA, we don't want to belong to you guys. Give my show. Yeah.
Don Diego, you mean?
Not here. The one down in San Ysidro.
You told
I told him we were getting out.
who was that?
The veterans down there.
The VFW down there, and was that VFW? What was the name of it?
San Ysidro veterans.
Is it still existing today?
Yep, I think so. Anyway, we dropped. I'm a member up here now.
Was that VFW mainly World War II veterans of Mexican ancestry?
Most of them were World War I veterans that we were fighting. And what happened is that every time we'd come up with something, they'd vote us down. So I said, if we can't get along, I'm getting out. And pretty soon everybody else says, all of us were vets. We just got out. I became El Presidente, and I lost this guy here. He went back in the service. This guy here got called back into the service too. When Korea came out, he called him back in. But he out of some of the things that we did. Here's my brother and I again. Here's our brother Rat right there. We had a guy by the name of Johnny Rocha. He was a cartoonist or whatever you want to call him, and he made up one of these characters to resemble one of us, Here's a license that I had to acquire in order to serve booze and everything else. We used to put on dances. And what we did is we take out we put on a big dance on a Saturday just before a big holiday. And the way it worked out, our first one was going to be Mother's Day. And it's on a Sunday. And what happened is that we wanted this hall to have our dance, and it was occupied on Saturday. So we said, well, hell, we'll just put it on Sunday. And said, no, you'll never make it, man. You guys got to lose money, And we'll put it on. We're just going to work and get some people down here, So we were all bachelors except my oldest brother. Everybody in that picture was a bachelor. I didn't know any more girls than anybody else, but we approached the girls and told them, hey, this is what we're going to do. And we got the girls there, and the boys followed. And we had a smash, Well, the next thing after Mother's Day, I think, was 4th of July. But anyway, we hit all of those dates. and the dances got bigger and bigger and bigger. We had our own band. We had everything. We get licenses. That license you saw in there, that was so we could serve booze. We even put crap tables out there, and we got away with it. We were making so much money that we used to have a big party on the treasury just for the group.
What was the BFW that you once belonged to, the one in San Isidro? Was it mainly composed of Anglo, or was it?
Well, it always existed, okay, because there were World War I people, that were already in, the veterans, and nobody attended it. There was nothing going on. So once the thing was established, then you had to become a member of it. Mm-hmm. So when we signed up, we thought it was going to be a good thing, and then we found out that these guys were, just a bunch of old guys that they didn't want to do anything. So we just
Now, this conflict that you encountered, was it and your friends? Was it a racial conflict or
no? No, we just said, well, we want to have some fun, and we're not going to have any fun with all these old guys, trying to do something else.
Were you guys welcome there? And when you visited that location, were you and your friends welcome there?
Yeah, sure we were. What happened is in San Isidro, they have a library. They had the school grounds in the school, the grammar school, and they had the civic center. The civic center was quite a large building, and it was just, they had a stage and everything else. They had a kitchen and anything you wanted, for parties and things like that. And it would take about 500 people. And it was just perfect for dancing. We used to set up bars. I put up the roulette machines. we pulled out. Well, that license we had, we used to do everything, And what happened was this, is all of a sudden we got a bit scared because what are we going to do with all this money that's going in the bank? Somebody's going to say, hey, what the heck is this, And so we said, well, the best thing to do is just start spending it, And we would. We'd put on a big dance, and they'd say, okay, on the treasury, we're going to have a big party down at one of the places down in Tijuana. They had a lot of good restaurants and places to dance, things like that. And we'd go down there and have dinner, and we'd probably spend $400 or $500, but it would come out of the treasury.
Were you enlisted in the Navy, right?
I enlisted.
When did you first get called to go to training camp for boot camp?
What happened to me, is I went in and I was sworn in about the 3rd of March. This is 1942, 3 months after the war. And they told me, he says, you're going to get paid until you're called in because right now we're overflowed. We don't have any place to put them. They said, but we'll call you in about 3 months. And they did. Because the latter part of June, and it was me and one other guy from San Diego. His name was Tony Osuna. We were the only people from San Diego. All the rest of them were from Texas and Oklahoma and all of my favorites. I had 6 fights in 2 weeks, and I won them all. They picked on the wrong guy, I'll tell you.
When you were in training camp, you identified with people from Oklahoma?
Oklahoma and Texas.
Were these other Mexican guys, or?
They were all Texans. There was 8 Mexicans altogether, Tony and I, and then there was 6 guys from Texas. Most of them were from San Antonio and El Paso. There was Torreses. I remember 2 Torreses. They're nice people.
Why did you?
The only thing it is, see, them guys were used to getting kicked around. I wasn't, you know. And you know what they tell me? Te van a matar. That's all they always tell me. Te van a matar. No, they're not.
Why? Because you fought them?
Well, these guys, they'd trip you, they'd push you, they'd do this and that, and I'd clock them. And
Were you ever discriminated by these people while you were?
no, what happened was they almost run me out of the Navy 2 weeks after I was in. The officer commander called me in to his office. So they turned me in, one of the guys. He said, "What's the problem?" And I told him. As commander, I says, "I came here to fight Japanese, and I didn't to get pushed around. As I'll do anything you want me to, but I'm not going to get pushed around or kicked around or nothing like that." "Yeah, it's pretty good out here." I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty good. I can take care of myself." And he says, "Well," he said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to make you the master at arms of that company. You run it." I said, "All right, I will." I changed.
What were your duties as a master of arms?
I placed all the guys on details on a daily basis.
Detail meaning
We have our training, outside on the field, okay? But when you come in, you have to make up your bunks and things like this, in your showers. You got to clean the toilets and all that. Then we had to assign so many guys for mess. And that was my duty. And there was very few complaints.
So where did you when you were called start serving? Where were you stationed?
That was right here. I went to Naval Training Center.
Where?
Naval Training Center over at Point Loma.
You remained in there for how long?
They cut the training period down to 60 days because of the urgency, okay? And after 60 days over there, they put a temporary center right up here at Balboa Park. They took a couple of the old buildings from the exposition, and the Navy occupied them. And I was there about 2 weeks. And they put us all on the train. We went up to Vallejo. And I was there about 2 weeks, and
Northern California, correct?
Yeah, north of San Francisco. And I went out on the first ship.
What ship was this?
The USS Lavalette.
Okay.
And we were down in the Southwest Pacific. There's a lot of little islands out there. A lot of
trace for us. What particular islands you were stationed in? And so from the time you left Vallejo, you left to where?
Well, our first stop was Pearl Harbor. We had to fuel up there. We went from there to Samoa.
What were your after Pearl Harbor had been bombed? What did Pearl Harbor look like?
It took about a year to clear the harbor. There was 12 ships that were sunk. Not all of them remained sunk, but they had to get them back up, put them in dry docks, and return them and get them back on the water. But the Arizona never got up, and there was one that didn't float again. They had fueling spaces there for the ships so that they could reload before they went down. Everything north of the equator belonged to the Japanese. Anything south, you could still sort of go around them and miss them. So you get to Hawaii, then the next stop would be Samoa, American Samoa. That drops below the
Here?
equator. And then we go into New Caledonia. That was our French possession at that time. And then from there, we'd either go to New Zealand. If they were getting ready to raid one of the Japanese possessions out there, it might be New Zealand or Australia. And that first trip, we went to Auckland, New Zealand. And then from there...
Was that where you see your first battle, your actual battle?
No. Then we went from there to Brisbane, Australia, to Townsville, and then we went to New Guinea. New Guinea is the biggest island down there in that area, okay? And it's north of Australia. And they had some real good harbors here. The Japanese were on it. And the next jump was going to be Australia. The only thing is their supply depots and things like that was about 1,500 miles from there in an island called Truk. That was their headquarters. That was, I think it's part of the Ellis Islands. Out there, you don't go by an island, you go by the group. And there's all kinds of them. We were in New Guinea. Right above that, there was Los Negros, Yalis. And then you get up on the northern side, that's when you start getting up around Samoa and places like that. But what they were doing was trying to clear us out of there. We were just trying to hold what we had. And in November, when we got torpedoed, we had just lost 5 cruisers, I think, in one battle. The Battle of Santa Cruz. You got 4 American cruisers and 1 Australian cruiser. But this went on continuous. It took the United States Navy from about June of 1942 I guess till about May of 1944. And we wound up moving from Port Moresby to Hollandia in New Guinea. That was in the north east side of New Guinea. And that was a beautiful harbor there. Right above us from that harbor is where General MacArthur had his headquarters too. And they had a big airfield there. They could hit the Philippines with the bombers from there. But there were so many places available to hide big ships. Not just 1 or 2, fleets. We lost a lot of ships out there, but the Japanese lost everything. In 1 year, we took out 5 out of 7 of their aircraft carriers. We knocked all their battleships out except 2, and we finally got them at the last. One of our submarines knocked the last one out. And then it was just a matter of eliminating the airplanes.
The first time that the ship you were on got torpedoed, what were the casualties?
14 of them.
for today?
14 then.
Anybody here?
Yeah, they're all good, my friends. We were all in the engineering department. I was just fortunate that I was in the forward fire room, and the guys that got hit were blasted on everybody in the after fire, in the generator room back there.
Where were they standing? Where were they? What was that? Where did that torpedo hit? What part of the ship?
It went right through. It went right through. Jumped over the shaft and wiped out everything down there. It knocked out 2 boilers, so you've only got 1 fire room to light off, and then it was forward. They only had 1 propeller.
Now, was it a Japanese aircraft or a submarine that hit your?
It was a torpedo, but it was off of a Japanese torpedo. They thought it was submarine, but there was no submarines employed at that time down there.
This first experience, seeing a lot of, or seeing some of your friends die, did this experience change your outlook on war? And
No, I'll tell you the type of feeling you really have. Okay, and, I think we're all born with this characteristic early on. You know, you get to know a person and you like them, and it's hard to give them up. It's a bad feeling. I'll tell you something. You don't know whether to say hooray for me and cry for you or something like that, because it could have been you just as easy as anybody else. But those things occur, and some of us are lucky, and there's always somebody that's going to get it.
any friends that you knew from training camp? Any Mexicanos that you knew?
No. There was a couple of those kids on there. Both of them, it was Torres, Sandy, and Ray. They were both from Texas. And there was a kid by the name of Ramos. And Ramos was the only engineer. The other 2 guys were deck guys. So they were up in one of the vent turrets, probably. They weren't down in the fire room. But there was a couple of kids in there that, were real good friends with me. What the heck? They were in the engineering department, and were in the fire room. These fire rooms are big compartments, probably about as big as here, okay? You got 2 boilers in there, you got generators, you got all pumps and everything else like that. And each one is identical. It's put together in a network where if some guy goes out here, you turn one valve and transfer it to the other side, see? So you can keep that ship going no matter how bad it's in, as long as it doesn't sink. The saddest part of it really is you have to get rid of them. And you have 4 bodies laying in that compartment. It's all sealed, and you have to go down and get it. You know, each body.
Were you one of the persons that went out there to get the bodies?
No, because I was on duty all the time, and we had that other fire room going. But they sent guys down and they cleaned them up and put them in bags and they threw them over the side. You couldn't hold them anymore.
Was that as a rule for a typical rule
Yeah.
for dead people?
There was cases where if a body wasn't too badly blown up, and if they had the rooms, they might put them in the ice boxes or something like that. But when you get hit by a torpedo that way and you blow everything up, you're not going to find anybody intact. You know, and it's strange, because you go through those, and you're not feeling for yourself. Sorry for yourself. You're trying to help the guy, and you know he's dead, and it's a sad. It's really bad. It's really bad. I read somewhere, so it said that you have to be a young man to fight worse. You have a type of courage to just never outlive. It's in you, it's part of you, and the stuff.
After that, the shipping torpedo, how long were you out of commission for?
Well, I'll tell you, we were told all the way down to Noumea, and that's in New Caledonia, so it was about probably about 600 miles. I think it took about 4 or 5 days. And then what we try to do is patch things up so that we could get the forward fire room going. And we'd have one propeller. And that took a few days. Then we went into Pearl Harbor, and they did some more work on it. Took almost a month to get back. I know one thing, we got back before Christmas, so. Because, yeah, I got home for that Christmas.
You came back home for Christmas?
Yeah, that was 1942. That was on my 5th month, yeah. And they let you off for 3 days. And they rotated the crew that way. 1/3 of the guys were gone for 3 days. The only thing of it is, if you live inside, they were good. But it took you a day to get down here and a day to get back, so you spent 1 day and that was it. But you know what happened, see? This is when I got in that the executive officer called me up and told me about I going to become a fighter pilot, and I told him I didn't want to. I wanted to go back on a ship. Well, something came up, and it said, well, we're going to send you over there for a couple of months. You might come back. Well, the Navy had a degaussing station in San Francisco. And they were short of men, I guess. And we weren't doing that much, so they said, I was one of the guys they sent over there. And I was there for a few months, and then I got another ship and went back out.
What was the name of the ship that you got on?
The second one I went on, it was a USS Amicus. It was a auxiliary ship that did any kind of repairs. They repair anything from PT boats to battleships. But you had to be with the crew, with the fleets. You traveled with them. Normally, those tenders and things like that, they select an area out there that's safe. If you get hit, then you're going to that place to get repaired. But this auxiliary repair ship that they had traveled with the fleet.
And what were your duties? Did you have different duties this time around?
Well, I was an engineer, so when you come out of the engineers, you got electricians, you have machinists, motor mechs, carpenters, welders, ship fitters. All that's part of the fleet, the crew. You have what they call the deckhands. They're the people that work above. They take care of the hull, as far as, but they don't. What they do is just sort of keep the hull clean and painted. Take care of the boats. The gunners, of course, take care of the guns from the big turrets and things all the way down to the small machine guns.
So where's it your fleet head to now? Second time around.
Oh, when we went back out, we wound up down there where we started from, right back to New Guinea, and we were operating out of a port called Port Moresby, and then when everything moved up, it moved up to Hollandia.
Tell me a little bit about you gotta okay. So we were talking about you were saying that it would be pretty hard to get a good job in the military because it was mostly for those who were top, right?
Yeah.
So you what do you do afterwards? What would you do afterwards in terms of career and
Well, what I wanted to do is to get back into baseball, but then when they said $100 a month, I said no. And I went back in, I shipped over. Well, they gave me my grade back, and I wound up in Vancouver, Washington. Well, it took quite a while before I got the next promotion. But when I did, I went to Chief Petty Officer. And then I was in the submarine service, so I was drawing 50% more for that. And things went pretty well. I got married.
is that what you met your wife after the war?
Yep.
How do you meet her and where do you meet her?
We met her at I knew, because of that club that we had. One of the, here's my family right here. All of us. That up trip. Anyway, they had in Logan Heights, the girls had a club of some kind. I forgot what the hell they called themselves, but they had a name,
Here in Mount Logan?
Yeah. And they put on dances. So we'd always get contact with one another, and every time we had something come, we'd call them up and say, get all the girls you can, we're going to have a big dance, all this. And they never missed any of them. So my wife was one of them, and her girlfriend was a real good friend of mine, and we started going around together. But it was about a year and a half later that I got married. I was 19. And I got married on, Christmas Day, I think my 50th anniversary. Yeah, I got married on the 24th of 1950. And let's see if I can show you some pictures of my wife when she was younger. Have you ever heard of the name Roberto de la Madrid?
No. Who is he?
Roberto de la Madrid was the next governor of Baja California. He was from San Isidro. But he got out of the States when the war started, and he went down to Mexico, and all of a sudden he's governor of Baja. But he's here.
In your opinion, do you think that the bomb that the U.S. dropped on Japan was a good decision?
I think it's a great decision to stop the war. It saved a lot more lives than if they'd have fought it out right up to the end. It was a sacrifice of a lot of people in just those two cities. There was 100,000 people in Hiroshima that went out with one blast, and a couple of days later, they hit the other one. There was another 50,000 people. But had they marched into the islands, we'd have lost 1 million, and they probably would have lost 5 times that many. Plus all of the damage they had done to their economy. They'd have wiped out everything and just flattened everything out. It was bad enough as it was. I went into Tokyo about seven months after the war ended. And at that time, 50% of Yokohama was on the ground. And Tokyo was just as bad. As a matter of fact, if it hadn't been for the royal palace of the king or whatever he is there in Japan, that was the only place they wouldn't bomb. That everything else was flattened in Tokyo.
How would you describe the civilians, people in general? Did they look pretty?
The Japanese were in a position where what could they do? They just bombed the hell out of us and kicked our butt, and now we gotta try to beg off of them, and that's exactly what they did. Anything that was making money was because the sailors were there, or the army was there, or the Air Force was there. Those cities that had military around them were doing quite well. The rest of them were in bad shapes. There was when you take Yokohama, and was the Navy town. Most of the ports, of course, the Navy stop in there, but they kept those places going. I would say that 25% of all the young women were involved in prostitution, and they were dance girls, but for $2 you could take them out. and this. So they had it pretty bad. They had it pretty tough.
When you came back to the United States, did things change for the Mexican people? Were they treated any better?
I never did feel that I was mistreated. That's the bad thing about it. The guys that had a hard time, remember when I told you earlier, were those who were probably first generation. Okay? That means that their parents just got here and the kids hadn't heard anything but Spanish. Okay? Well, we were born here. From the day that we started walking, we started learning English. I know that I don't know to this day which language I spoke first. Since I can remember, I was speaking both languages. And this comes about because I got a brother up here that's 8 years older than me. I got a sister up there that was 6 years older than me. And our brother was 4 years older than me. Now, all three of them were going to be speaking English to some extent. I started picking it up the day I was born. And it continued that way. And it continued that way with the younger sisters too,
So, the way you think that it was mainly due to the language, language problem that people were discriminated against?
I think the people who were the first generations get here, they're confused because they have to learn how to speak it, or they have to understand it. What can you say? Shrug your shoulders? I don't know, And it's very difficult for the whole family. It's hard on the parents. It's hard on the children. And then they say, well, they won't let us do this. And that's where you get those bad feelings.
Were your parents discriminated when they first came to this country? Or did...
If they were, I never heard them speak of it. They were in mining towns where, like I said, Open, Arizona, even when it had 20,000 people or whatever it was, there was only about maybe 10 families, let's say. And that was it.
Tell us how you and other friends of yours formed a club, which were called the
Brotherettes.
The Brotherettes.
Well, it came about because we wanted to get away from the old timers, the old vets. Every time that we'd suggest something, they'd turn it down, They would say, hey, we want to have something to do and have some fun out of this,
For example, what kind of proposals or propositions did you were rejected?
Well, somebody suggested one time, why don't we put on a barbecue, and see if we can get some money up. And we wanted to put up a plaque for one of our friends who got killed during the war. And we're going to mount it at the Federal Library there and whatnot, And they were sort of against it. And
where was this? More or less the years that you started the Brotherettes?
Well, this is right after the war ended. This is 1946. They were already gone, but this is when we tried to get in 1946. Some of them had entered before I even got back, really. So when I got in, it was 1946. But it seemed like they just, they weren't ready for anything. And what the hell? You think you're going to get it from the city or the government or who? They said, well, we've got other things they can do, and, well, let's do something. They didn't want to take orders from a bunch of young guys, And they sort of teamed up, all the old guys over here and all the young guys over here. So I told them, shit, let's get out of here and we'll do whatever we want. And that first dance we had, I remember it was on Mother's Day and everything else, and we made all kinds of money. We bought that goddamn plaque and we put it up.
What was the name of the war veteran that you were trying to honor? Who was he? Someone you grew up with?
Yeah, shit, yeah, he was my next door neighbor.
What was his name?
Sebastian Arguello.
Arguello. He got killed in combat.
He got killed over Italy on a bomber. He was a bombardier on a bomber. He and I played football together. We played softball together, football together. He was a good athlete. He was a hell of an athlete. And he was one of the few guys that had any college. He went to 2 years of junior college up here at Riverside.
Prior to the war?
Yeah.
Well, they that one of the few guys that has college education. Was it very hard for Mexicans to get an education back then, or to college?
And you remember what I told you earlier? The only way you was going to get in is to have a scholarship or have parents who could afford to. Well, Sebastian got a scholarship. He was a great athlete. I'll tell you how good he is. Now look, he was about 210 pounds, about 6'2". He was a track man. He was the best shot putter in the county at that time, with a 12-pound shot for Class A, they used to call it. He was the number one shot putter. He was the number one high jumper. He could jump over 6'6" at that time. And those are two sports, that are really off from one another. A shot putter is usually for a big, hefty guy or something like that. And he wasn't, but he was a great athlete and strong as hell. And then he was a great jumper. And then for speed is another thing. One year he was the fastest guy on the squad. Oh, hell, it took nobody to say, hey, that guy can play football too, And that's exactly what they did. They took him up to Riverside Junior College, and he played 2 years up there before the war started. When it did start, he went right into the Air Force, and he got promoted to, I don't know, probably lieutenant, first lieutenant or whatever. I don't know how they started him, but he was commissioned.
You also mentioned that you had your brothers also fought in the war.
Yep.
And their names were what were their names?
Chris and Dave.
Where did Chris fight?
Both of them saw action over in the Pacific. They were radiomen and bombers.
The Key Mag.
Yeah, they both came in.
So what was the going back to the brother rights? What was the philosophy? What kind of was it? A social club?
Yeah, we call it a social club. When we first started out, we actually were just men, and then later on, the girls had a club too. And I said, "Why don't we just get together? What the hell? We're together all the time anyway." But you know what really screwed it up for everybody? At one time, the only married guy was my oldest brother. And they've been married they got married about right after the war started, in 1941. I think a week after Pearl Harbor, I think my oldest brother married his girlfriend. But anyway, they were the only married people at that time, I think. And the rest of us were bachelors, so we start losing them one at a time. Hey, so-and-so's going to get married. Count him out, And then another thing that happened in my case is that I was in athletics right here in San Diego. I was playing football near football season down here at the old stadium. And then I was playing baseball out in Hawaii because that's where the baseball team was for the submarine force, and I was their captain and everything else. So as soon as spring would come, I'd go back out to Hawaii. Well, on one of the trips coming back, I ran into my wife. I'd known her before that, but we hadn't got much further than that. And then we got going pretty good. And then about a year later, we got married. That was in 1950.
So you got Canada out too?
Yeah. Well, what happened after that was they used to send me back here to play football, okay, because they had football team here, and then I'd go over to Hawaii to play baseball. So when I got married, I told them, I said, I'm going to quit playing football because I don't want to go back to San Diego and take the whole family with me. So hell, we stayed out there. Let's see, 52, 53, and 54. And for 55, they told me, said, we're going to send you to electronics school because your IQ is way up here, and we need people that know math and whatnot, The Navy was the first in educating electronics. And they're the first people that I got involved with computers. Nobody knew how to teach it. Nobody knew what a computer was, let alone, know how to teach it. But they got it going pretty good, and then they allowed the Air Force into it and the Army, and then they were starting to take college people from the University of California into our school. And I'll be damned what happened. I went up there, I was a teen at that time, and they said, hey, you've been selected for warrant officer. Try me in. I said, what the hell am I taking this school for there? He said, well, you got an option. He said, would you want to be a warrant officer, as what the hell they call him? There's the name for him. Or would you just stay as an engineer? And I said, well, if I got a choice, I'd like to go where I know what the hell I'm doing. I said, I don't know where I'm at right now, And that's the way it was. It was something new. I got there because of my math, primarily, because you had to have math. And then the engineering had everything in we're talking about the making of the computers, not toying with them. How do you make one? Well, because I was an engineer, I knew some about transmissions and things like this, the voltage, and it's remarkable with the power that you're working with and with all that shit in a little box like this, So I told him all, I says, if I got a choice, I'm going to stay in engineering. So that's the way it went. And, of course, it wasn't going back to Hawaii more because my ball playing days were over there because now I'm in Austin, right? So what happened was that I was assigned to a ship here, but it was in 1955, and I wasn't going to get this commission until 66. I'll be damned if I don't get called from Washington. And he says, we're going to send you over to the Naval Training Center. You're going to be an instructor down there. We've got 600 Puerto Ricans transferred to the Navy from the Army. So all of a sudden, that goddamn place down there is full of Puerto Ricans. They couldn't speak a goddamn word of English.
So you were teaching them Spanish, or?
they had the best system I ever saw in my life, and why the schools haven't adopted that all along, I don't know. But they came up with a system. No, you had to put words in their mouth. They knew absolutely no English, you know. And if you tell a person something, you say, now, that's a door. Oh, a door, okay. You turn around, what's that? I don't know. But what happened in this case, we started out, I don't know if you've even heard this expression, because before I came up with it, I'd never heard it. Do you know that there's 188 words that are spelt, or the pronunciation of it has a reason for it, and you don't know why? In English. If you was to spell the word Sam, S-A-M, and you look at it, you say, okay, that's an S, that's an A, that's them. Sound them out. Oh, you got Sam, that's great. Now, if you use the same technique, and they say, all right, now, let's change this word. S-A-M-E. Sound it out. Oh, samey. Not samey. It's Sam. Same. And there's 188 of those. You have to learn those first. But there's others that you can pick off the wall. If I was to put up a plate right up there where you say, prisoners of war over there, and you say plate, and you look at it, and if you can only speak Spanish, you don't say plate, you say plato. Hey, that's a plate. Oh, yeah, plate. There's so many words that are translated from Spanish to English that are identical. The spelling is even identical. You have to have a different pronunciation. Well, that can be eliminated. Just by looking at it, you say, oh, yeah, that's a plate, plato, you know?
So were you involved in the teaching English or so the Puerto Ricans that you?
10 companies. And we used to work with them an hour a day. And I wasn't the only one. They must have taken, oh, hell, probably 20 petty officer chiefs. And like in my case, I was going to become a warrant officer.
How long did you remain teaching?
Until they got everybody into the fleet. Hell, about 6 months later, they were talking and they were getting along pretty good. So anyway, what happened was that they called me up and says, where do you want to go? So by this time I was married, and I said, well, what the hell? I said, how about getting me someplace in Hawaii? So the guy says, Hawaii? I said, what the hell? I've only been out there 8 years. So I said, how about giving me 3 more years out there? So he says, well, there's only one place that we can put you. I says, if we send you to Hawaii, I says, where's that? With headquarters. I'm under the big honcho out there, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, 4-star Admiral. Well, my job wasn't running the fleet. My run was taking care of the goddamn automobiles. We had a motor pool. I think it was 160 vehicles in that thing. And I was going to be the guy that ran the show. So, let's see, that was all of what? 57, 58, '59, and I come back. And the reason I came back is because we were building a new cruiser, and they were going to send me on the cruiser. So we got established here in San Diego, and I had to go up to San Francisco, and I was up there for 1 year helping organize that goddamn ship, because when you build a new ship, you got to put a lot of pieces in the right place, you know?
What was your title?
I was a warrant officer. I was a W-2 at that time. And under the engineering force, I'm the repair officer. So anything it has to do with hull, firefighting equipment, the fire main, they all belong to me. And we got that finished. I made a tour to the Orient, and on that ship, we carried the Big Admiral in the Pacific on that cruiser, the Oklahoma City. And then where the hell did I go from there? Oh,
Did you retire as a military?
Lieutenant Commander.
10. So you stayed 20 years or
30.
30 years?
I made 15 promotions in the time I started.
What was the, what were you before you retired?
When you start out as a recruit, okay? You have 3 steps, and you're a non-com. You're enlisted. You're seaman first, seaman second, and a recruit. The recruit's the lowest one. And then you go into the petty officers. You go 7 steps before you get to chief. And then they added a senior chief and a master chief. So I went from 7 to 9 in the enlisted. And then they have the warrants. There's 4 warrant officers. And then from that you go to officer, line officer, and you start from ensign all the way to captain. So I skipped some, but altogether I had 15 promotions.
During 30-year period?
I retired as a lieutenant commander.
What year did you retire?
I retired in 1972, 30 years after I started.
And what did you do with next?
I was only 48 years old when I was retired.
What was your next profession?
Oh, hell, I became a real estate broker. And things went bad, and I said, well, I think I'll go down to NASCO and get a job. And I got a department's job down there. They started me out at $22 an hour. And we went pretty good, and then we ran out of work, and they retired me. Shit, they paid me off. I had about $24,000 in savings down there and everything else. And I told them, I'm going to go down there and become the head pro at National City. So I applied for the job down there. It's the best head pro golf, professional golfer. I got hired, and I was there for 10 years. I had it so goddamn good that I told him I didn't want a salary. He said, what do you mean you don't want a salary? I said, I don't want a salary. I said, because if I take a salary from you, they're going to add it to my goddamn income, and I'm going to have to pay more income tax, and I don't want to pay any income. So I'm already paying enough, and I get almost $5,000 a month from retirement.
Right now?
Yep. And then I've got my income, from Social Security. So altogether, I get about $60,000 a year. But what happened up there with this golf course, I said, I don't want any more goddamn numbers put down that's going to deduct from me. And so I'm going to run this goddamn place for you, but I'm going to take care of my own lessons. I was charging $40 a lesson, and I was booking 5 lessons a day for 5 days. And it was all cash. There were no checks. And I had all kinds of deals. So if it was a woman and she signed up for 5 lessons, I'd say, okay. As if I asked you for the whole thing, it'd be $200. I'll drop it down to $25 a lesson. So just give me the $125 when you step in here for your first lesson. And at the end of 5, you can do it again or whatever you want. And I had a lot of fun.
What's your
So I did that for 10 years. Then I said, that's all I'm going to do. I don't want to do anything else.
during this years after the post-war, did you get involved with any political organizations, support any movements?
I was going to do it, yeah, but I don't like the way they operate. There's always, like, the reason I'm not more involved with the veterans. I've been involved with veterans. I've worked with them. I've wrote to them. I've done everything in the goddamn world. But if you want to know the real truth, okay? I'm a veteran. I get letters that says, we want you to send you $15 or $20. And don't forget, what you own, I don't own a fucking thing. But let me tell you the real sad part about it. The people who are disabled, 75% of those disabled were not under fire. Okay? 1 out of every 4 might have been hurt during World War II, during the Vietnam War, or out in Vietnam. But what they're doing is they're providing hospitals, food, everything that you can think of some goddamn guy who was in the service 30 years ago, became a wino or a dope addict, and now they're asking for money for those guys. They're asking for money for people who are not eligible for it. And for some guy that wants to pick up a few $100,000 just because he's running the show. It's not something that I'm making up. It's something that I've read right in the goddamn papers that they print. The biggest waste right now in the Treasury is the goddamn money that's being given to... I'm not making this up. This is a fact.
What's your
Have you heard of some of these hospitals, the way they're kept, and the goddamn money that they're spending there? I mean, any one of these damn books have it printed. Every goddamn edition tells you about it. Some of these homes that they're building for this guy and that. It's a lot of bullshit.
So what's your opinion on the Korea War and Vietnam War? You think the United States had any business getting them out?
The Korean War, it had to be stopped. We just got through with the Japanese, and they were in no position to defend. They were in no position to say, we're going to stop this. The Chinaman or the Russian or anybody who wanted to could have run right over Korea and landed in Japan, and not a thing to stop it. The only good thing about the whole thing is the Chinese and the Russians both wanted it. So they both got involved, and before you know it, they're fighting one another. It wasn't anything we was going to gain. How did we gain anything? You got a few thousand more guys get killed, but we had absolutely nothing to gain. We were already feeding Japan. So we get into that Korea, and then we said, okay, now we're going to feed them too. And the Chinese got a little bit mad, and so did the Russians, but they backed off. It was a situation, I believe, that it was created by fear. I think the Russians were afraid that the Chinese would take over. And, of course, if that happens, then that makes all of the northern part of Russia vulnerable. There's nothing to protect them. The Russians cannot protect all that vast area that they have on the northeast part of that continent. And the Chinamen, all they have to do is just step across the line.
How about the Vietnam War?
Oh, that was a stupid goddamn war that should have never happened. To start with, we should have stayed out of it completely. Okay? First of all, it was France's war, not the United States. That country had been run by the French for I don't know how many goddamn hundreds a year. They had a king there. Let him stay there. I don't know how much they get paid, but what the hell, they're going to take it anyway. So instead of fighting the good guys, we fought the bad guys. Or instead of fighting the bad guys, we fought the good guys. That's the way it turned out. You know, the hero to the Vietnamese was not the United States Army or Navy or nothing like that. It was that bad guy over there. He became the hero of everything because he got the country back together. Now we were just out there fucking everything up. Well, what did we have to gain there? What was there to gain? Absolutely nothing. The French had been milking that little old country for years and years and years, you know, just like the English had done in Africa, you know. Shit, they had all kinds of oil and this and that, but when they got out, what happened to the oil? Oh, it's gone now.
How many children did you have?
We have 4. We have children. We have a son and 3 daughters.
And did they are they in the military, or they got a classification?
No, my son became he's a pretty good athlete. He became a professional golfer. He was on the circuit for, since 1985. He's not playing with the big guys because he's not qualified now. He lost his qualifications. I've got a daughter who's married, not married anymore, with 2 sons who are 25 and 27. Both of them are college kids. My daughter runs a beauty shop over in Coronado.
You're cooking Coronado, California?
Yeah, right across the bridge. And then my second daughter, the nurse up at La Jolla. And my youngest daughter, she was an All-American softball player at the University of Arizona.
Currently? She's currently playing softball?
No, she went to college at the University of Arizona.
And she graduated?
And she was a goddamn good softball player, too. Now she's got her master's even. She's the head of athletic department in Phoenix, Arizona at Central High School. She's a real good athlete, too, I'll say. She's, I'll tell you what, she's so goddamn much like me, it's pathetic. She should have been a boy, I'll tell you something. She is a fighter.
Did any of your children have interest in the military?
Well, they had some interest in it, because they knew I was a naval officer, and they lived in a what do you call it? The right habitat or whatever. Not what I'm trying to say with it. But they're accustomed to the life of the Navy. They enjoy it. We have a lot of advantages if you're living on base or off the base, and you can have anything to have on the base. And they loved Hawaii. They grew up out there. My oldest two daughters graduated out there from high school. The two youngest ones, we had a sort of a strange family because the first two girls are 10 years older than the second two. My oldest daughter was born in 51, and then my second daughter was born in 53. Then my son didn't come along until 1961. And my youngest daughter was born in 63. So they're 10 years apart. But they get along good. But Rachel, I'll tell you something. She's a attractive girl and everything else, but boy, she is tough. She is mean and tough.
What's your do you think war is good for? Do you think war is a good thing?
I don't think anything that destroys individuals is good for humanity. I don't care who it is or what nation it is. But we haven't found a salvation. We're going to have to do something about it before too long, because we're going to wind up blowing the whole goddamn earth off.
That's the final question that I want to ask you today. And this is for society. What kind of message do you give to the youth of today and future generations?
I think this should have been happening all along. Is, as an individual, you have to prepare yourself. You have to be ready. And you should take a positive attitude and try to stay away from politicians who have all the answers and as long as you do the fighting. I don't like that. I really don't. I volunteered to go to war, and I wasn't in any way rewarded. I wasn't expecting to be rewarded. But I think I gained a lot from it. I don't feel that I should be praised, or I shouldn't get anything that I didn't earn. So what I've got right now, I earned it, and I'm proud of it. But I don't like the approach of politicians, let's say, for one thing. There's too goddamn much political politics in this world. Let's look at the shit that just occurred. That was the stupidest goddamn thing I ever saw in my life. And them guys saying, well, we didn't know that, and we couldn't do that, we couldn't help that. That son of a bitch, and it was all fixed.
What is this you're referring to?
The being president here, everything that happened in Florida about the voting. How the hell do you handle things, especially to get things right? And then you say, well, we're going to throw 25,000 votes out. They don't mean nothing. Well, why the hell even bother? If we're going to do that, why the hell don't we just have a dictator, let him step in and bullshit? Voting isn't doing it. You know, the Bush company. The Bush company wasn't born yesterday. George Bush Sr. was born to a senator who was a millionaire. When he went into World War II, at the age of 18, he got a commission without college or without any training. He got a commission, and then they made him an aviator. At the age of 18, he got a commission. Did he work for it? No. Politics got it for it. And his son is just like that. He was born to a millionaire, and he's got away with all the shit in the world. He's got caught with drugs. He was smoking marijuana. What the hell else? He come up with something else that he lied about, and then he ran over somebody, or no, he got a traffic ticket or something like that. He had to wiggle his way out of that. And as far as knowledge is concerned, he's not that smart. He's got a lot of money, though. You don't have to be intelligent. You have to have a lot of money. That's pull any kind of shit you want. You got away with it. It's sickening to think about it, but by God, well, I guess mistakes have been made before, and there'll probably be some more made before it's all over with. You see this here? This is my birthday a couple of years ago. There's that picture. I took that for my mother right after I got home after World War II.
How old were you then?
21.
Is that your son, your daughter, or family?
Let's see. Who's off here? This is my sister-in-law. This is my wife. That's me. This is one of my nephew's wives. This is my son's wife, the little boy.